That's what it is. So we prefer to mentally judge the character. We prefer to find excuses to why we're not trying something that's outside of our known comfort behavior. It's only because we're afraid ourselves. But hi everyone, this is Mihaela with Art of Experiencing. I know that I don't have the best light, but I'm doing this from school because I have 3 hours between my last class and the next class. And I went to have coffee and it was wonderful, and I had a chocolate croissant and everything was great, but I still have an hour to go. So I thought, let me just remember my prior class and what I was reminded of when working with directors and filmmakers, which was using all of the techniques and all of the exercises that, I have a paper cut observant. They were to do a monologue and they were to express themselves in ways that were going to be surprising. And the choices that they made with those monologues, like we always do as actors, I realized they're very constricted. We always make choices that are constrictive. We always make choices that are within the box because that's the way that we were brought up. That's what feels comfortable to us. So we had an argument, not even an argument, but it was a heated conversation, which I love when that happens because that's what acting does. It can affect some people in some way, and then it can affect other people in other ways. So the monologues, what do you think the most comfortable thing of doing the monologue was going to be? Without any kind of specific choice, starting to say the lines, starting to say the monologue. Everybody takes on the public one personality that we have in everyday life, that we were taught, that we were conditioned to portray. And we bring that self, that part of the self, to the character. And some people mistaken that by thinking that if you bring yourself, which is that one personality that we reveal to the public in everyday life, that's the self. So if you bring it to the character, that's going to be sufficient for the character because you are being yourself. And that's where the misunderstanding happens. When you are bringing yourself to the character, especially in method acting, when you are bringing yourself to the character, you have to search for different personalities that we all have within ourselves. We have to search for outside of the way that we behave in everyday life. We have to go beyond the one personality that we feel comfortable with. For as long as you're staying with the personality, which is the first one that you go to, it's going to be a one-note monologue. It's going to be a one-note character. So I am so grateful because when I teach, I get to be reminded by the students who are putting themselves in front of the rest of the class when they're trying to, in this case, do a monologue. And I'm learning that, especially for young students who have not lived as long as I have, contain themselves to what feels comfortable to them. And for them to mistake that with being the true self. The true self and the natural way of being or the comfortable way of being is not enough for the character to become interesting. If you're not going to try to find how many other personalities you have that you might not even be aware of, if you're not trying to surprise yourself in the way that you behave, if you're not trying to find different ways of expression, what you are going to bring to all the characters or even to everyday life, what you're going to bring to everyday life is going to be the same monotone way of behaving. And then what I realized, another thing on top of what I've just said, is the difficulty that we all have when being asked to be expressive. We do not want to allow ourselves to be expressive because that is being viewed as being over the top. That's being viewed as being bold. That is being viewed as being unaccepted. And we find reasons to why we're not going to go to those different expressions. And rather than accept that we are fearful of going there because we are not used to those other personalities that we might have inside of us, then we find justification to why we're not going there by saying, oh, but reading the text or reading the monologue or reading the play or the script, what I interpreted this character is doing is to just be seated in one way, which is one monotone way of doing things, which automatically suggests that that actor in this case is judging the character. When we are judging the characters as actors, we will not get to become bold or risky or living truthful sensory experiences in the given circumstances of the script. The reason we want to hang on to finding those excuses to why we're not going to be more expressive, this character is monotone, even with the risk of being wrong in the new discovered surprising expressions. But at least by trying them out, we will find out if they are the correct expressions that we want to bring to the character. And if they're not, if they are too bold for the character, we can at least put them to the side as being tried out in practice and not necessarily use them in the final film. We can go back to the one monotone note of being, because we decided now that's the choice that we want to go with, or that's the choice that the director wants to go with. But at least we have practiced the other versions. We've put them in practice. We have done them. We have convinced ourselves and we have convinced the director that ultimately he wants to go back to the beginning version of expression, which is the one where I'm just seated and I'm not doing anything. But even if we decide that we want to go with the simple expression, even if we decide that we want to go with the simple way of doing things, which is the most comfortable to what we're used to doing, you still have to create specific choices to what it is that you're going to be working on in this particular monologue or in a particular scene. If we go on stage as an actor, we have the impression that the thing that we want to do for a monologue is to recite, to just say out the lines without taking into consideration the place. Where is the place? Learning from the script. Where is the character in a physical place? If the character is in a physical place on stage or on set, depending on how many props we have around, depending on how much set there is, once we start with the reality of what is, for example, I had to, in order to find this place where I'm doing this episode from, I had to go and speak to this wonderful person who works at the school, and I had to ask him if there was a space available that students are not using where I could maybe relax and do this episode. He was sweet enough, he was kind enough, so my interaction with him was kind. I could not believe that he was actually going to go out of his way to do that, because that's not his job. So I'm already taking those sensations. I'm already being grateful for him having given me the opportunity to have some space before I start my next class, which is going to be in an hour. Having that moment prior, my interaction with this kind man, as soon as he brought me to the space, which is a classroom, he opened the door, I walked in. For me, this class is something that I have not been in, which automatically is asking of me to find the best solution of where to set up the camera with the lighting that I have, which is not the best lighting, but I'm already having to adjust to the location of the place that I'm in order to achieve my goal, which my goal right now is to be able to do this episode, right? So that's what I did. I came in, I turned on the lights. I was able to see where the lights were the best Like I said, they're not the best everywhere. So then I set my chair where I'm thinking right now that is the best for me to be able to be seen and have a fair lighting for the people who watch, not to be too much or to be not sufficient. That's already an experience that I'm going through, which I take with me right here, right now. So if I were to now start a monologue, I would take into consideration the moment that I had with a kind interaction, this space, which has all these beautiful film scenes from different movies. I recognize there's a picture of Al Pacino that's up there. I think it's from the movie Dog Day Afternoon. That was so many years ago. Then I see another picture of Scarlett Johansson from Lost in Translation, which is the movie that put her on the global stage. And then there are some old VHS tapes that are on the side of the left wall. Also, I'm realizing now the walls are different colors. So there's a wall on my left that's red. There's a wall that's in front of me that's blue. There's blue on the right. And then there's also this big screen TV, which I didn't want to be part of the frame that I'm in. And now I'm hearing sounds which are coming from the pipes in the ceiling, or are they coming from upstairs, the next floor, from a class maybe that's already going on, or is it just electric? I'm not even sure. But only showing you, demonstrating to you my attention to the place as is required of me to move my head from where it was when I was speaking to the camera to be able to make all the observations that I did. Another observation could be that I'm turning my chair to see what's in the back. The wall behind me, there's a picture of the movie The Usual Suspects with Gabriel Byrne, whom I met a long, long time ago. We used to actually be some sort of friends. We were never like very close, but we went out as friends a couple of times. Even my sister from Greece met him when she was visiting me in New York. But that required of me to turn my back and to recognize, oh, there's Gabriel Byrne, The Usual Suspects. Already seeing all these pictures are putting me in a state of mind that is completely different from when I began the video. If you look back at the beginning of the video, you'll see that I don't have the same smile on, because experiences, due to my observation and recognition of all these pictures, and the actor, which I happen to know personally, Gabriel Byrne, is giving me a different sensation, is giving me a different state of mind. And then I would go on and I would start the monologue with the reality of the physical place, which is the location of this room. If I were to do the monologue from here, using all of the observations that I have just demonstrated. As soon as I do that, the first line of the monologue is going to come out of my observation of all of the things on the different walls in this new classroom, and is going to be supported by my gratitude to this amazing person who found me this place, so I don't have to go for coffee for another 1 hour and not get to my objective, which is I really wanted to do my episode today, which is what I'm doing right now. After I have been completely observant of what is, to go more into the monologue of the character, then you allow to come in the imagination. The training of the imagination is of such importance as an actor, that at any time you can allow the imagine of the circumstances of the play. In this case, the character, let's say it's from a character in Chekhov, and the monologue takes place outside, and there's the seagull. I'm just focusing on the seagull, and there's a lake. So if I am to get into the character, I start with the same things that I did before the character. I start with the same observations of what is. I'm looking up again to see the picture of Al Pacino, who used to be one of the presidents of the Actor Studio. And just now, what occurred to me is that he's no longer the president of the Actor Studio. The presidents of the Actor Studio are Alec Baldwin. No, or is he part of it? Estelle Parsons. No, I take that back. I made a mistake. He's still one of the presidents of the Actor Studio. So that kind of thought process that's going on in my mind as the person, as the actor, is the thought process that's going to get me into the lines of the character, because characters are people who also have to have thoughts. So we never just have one singular thought in our head as a character. We always have multiple thoughts. So if I allow, oh yeah, Al Pacino, I was confused about him. I thought he was not the president, but he is the president. Okay, but I'm still looking at the picture. So then how do I transform and allow the imagination to come on and bring the imaginary place of the seagull with the lake? How can I put an image of the lake on top of the reality, which is the image of Al Pacino on the wall? I can just give myself permission to be a child and say, what particular lake comes to my mind that's going to be specific enough to convince myself to believe that I'm looking at a specific lake. It might not be the lake from the seagull for me because that's too general, but I can go back to when I was a child in the village where I grew up. We used to go up the hill with my friends and neighbors I grew up with. We used to go up the hill. It was one of those daily, not so much daily, but it was one of those weekend excursions that we would do. It was a recreation trip. It was a getaway to go into these beautiful hills of the village, to get to this lake. And once we got to the lake was known to us as children, or we were being told by adults that it was known the lake has no bottom, that it's so deep that it ends up in a river that's about 20 kilometers away from the village. And we believe that. So I'm imagining myself as a child going up those hills. What was happening to me if I were to recall my trip, my walk with my friends, who now I'm starting to envision them. Again, specific, how many friends do I envision? Who was one of them? One of the people that I envisioned was my first love, the first innocent love that I had when I was about 12 years old from the village. It was my first kiss. Where is he now that I'm combining the personal, the imaginative of the fictional characters from the play and my personal life? I can see him. He's very tall. I'm just imagining him, that he's walking in front of me, and maybe I'm having a difficult time now to get up the hill because I have to cross over something, a tree that was fallen. So he's giving me his hand to help me. So I'm putting my hand out for him to help me to overcome that physical obstacle, which is the tree, let's just say, that is in front of me. So already I'm constructing this personal story that is based on my personal experiences, but it's also making sense to the character from the seagull of Anton Chekhov, let's say. He's taking my hand, he's helping me go over. So I'm physically having to put myself into that so I can get up at this moment, and I can imagine that I'm actually moving myself, having to overcome the tree, this physical obstacle, and I'm no longer just seated in my one monotone way of doing the monologue. I'm already giving myself the permission to go with my personal recreation of what I remember from my childhood, from my youth, on top with the imaginary circumstances of the character. So creating the space is going to give you the foundation from which you have to start the monologue. Because if you don't have a foundation, if you don't have the behavior which is going to indicate from where the lines are coming from, you're just going to be seated, nothing happening, no expression on your face, no physical expression in the body, no thought process, but you're going to be an actor reciting a monologue, which is going to be boring and is not going to be different than any other actor who's going to interpret that role in a unique way. You're going to be the same as all or majority of the actors are interpreting a monologue. By giving yourself the permission to allow your personal to become part of the fictional story, you're bringing the story, the fictional story, to life in only one specific way to you, because only you, in this case, only I understand that those hills from the village going up to the bottomless lake. Only I understand my first love, who's now giving me the hand to help me cross the tree that's difficult for me to cross by myself. I can only interpret it from that point of view with those personal specific elements to it. So I'm going to create an interpretation of the character that's going to be different than any other actress portraying the same character for 100 or 1,000 years. However, you want to go back into the history of acting. So the students earlier in the class, some of the students earlier in the class, when being presented with the different options where you have to take yourself outside of the comfort zone, of the zone where you're just, yeah, but the character is just sitting in a chair and saying lines. There's no such option because the character is not an actor. And even if the character is an actor, he's not or she's not on stage in this particular situation. So the location and the physical place are so important to your behavior. And only when your behavior is made specific by you in the way that I just put it in practice as much as I can while I'm doing this, and I'm also being considerate that I want you guys to see me, so I'm not going off camera, but I'm also being considerate that there's a camera, for example, if this is being shot, but I am doing the physicality, I'm doing the gestures involving my personal story, involving my physical gestures of my body, using personal location to substitute for the classroom after I had paid attention to the reality of the classroom, and then using the person from my life at that time and bringing in an obstacle, which is the obstacle of the tree that he's helping me to come over it. And that's already putting me in a state of mind where if I were to start to say the first line of the monologue, I have this to come from. I have this filled in life that I'm already feeling happening. The line and the monologue is going to come out of. And then it's up to me how I continue it. If my objective is to continue to get the attention of my first love, the person that's there, it's going to depend on my imagination and how I visualize. The sense of sight comes into play, because if I'm continuing to have as the objective to be able to finish this episode for my YouTube channel, But at the same time, as the character, I want the love of my life to keep helping me all the way up to the lake. And maybe when I get there, he's going to kiss me for the first time. If I imagine that this is before he kissed me for the first time, because I know being kissed for the first time at the age of 12 by him is still going to be something that I will remember for the rest of my life, because it was my first butterflies in the stomach. It was my first innocent love. So if my objective is going to be, I want his attention, so I'm going to maybe the next time pretend that I'm having a difficult time walking. So I'm going to need for him to help me. Treplev, which is the name of the character in the play. So I substitute his real name for that name of the character, which I'm playing with, even if it's a monologue, because when you're speaking to someone in a monologue, you still are speaking to someone who may not be visible, who may not be on camera, but is off camera. The name, I'm not going to say the real name because you don't want to give away secrets of your personal gifts that you must have as a human being, and you have to protect them so you can continue to use them in acting. I'm going to replace his real name with the name of the character, and I'm going to call out and I'm going to say Treplev. He walks in front of me. I'm trying to catch up with you. I'm trying to catch up with you. And then maybe I realize, because we have to imagine his behavior. Maybe I realize that he doesn't want to help me anymore, that he's running ahead to catch up with somebody else. Is he actually more interested in the other person? He walks so fast ahead of me. His steps grow softer and softer. I can't see him. He just went behind a tree. How does that make me feel that he's not paying attention to me anymore? That's going to change the way that I say the next line. So the monologue has to be divided into different beats. It has to be divided into different change of thoughts. That's why it becomes a monologue, because you are interpreting it as if you're speaking with someone. Even if that person doesn't respond, you have to imagine that they are somehow responding. It doesn't have to be in words. You can also interpret, or you can also make up words that you're imagining they're saying back to you. Maybe I'm imagining that he's saying, I'm trying to help somebody else. So what does that say to me in my interpretation? There's another person that's more important, so he's not considering me to be as important as I thought. So maybe the kiss and maybe the innocent love that I feel for him, he's not going to return back. So that's going to change all of the ecstasy and all of the excitement that I felt when I touched his hand, when he helped me over the tree the first time. And now it's a different reaction because it's not what I thought. Reaching my objective to get to the lake, to him maybe kissing me for the first time by the lake, maybe that's not going to be what's going to happen. So what do? Do I retreat? Do I try again to get his attention? Do I apply a different tactic in the way that I want to get his attention? Do I maybe fall and imagine or pretend that I can't walk anymore, that I don't know, broke an ankle, or what is going to be my next tactic in order to get his attention? This is all work that's being done moment to moment to moment by combining the personal with the imaginary of the script. And not only will it help you as an actor to be able to be active and to create credible character to the people watching, but you will also create credible location. People watching, or the camera watching, is not just going to see an actor doing a monologue. The camera is going to read a human being, a character with a mind who's processing different thoughts, who's trying to overcome obstacles to achieve the objective, which is I want to be kissed by the time I get to the top of the hill by the lake. How do I go about doing that? What are the different tactics? What are the different ways in which I can do that? And it's also exciting. It's fun to do. It's so much more fun than to stay with the first I'm going to be comfortable. I'm going to use myself, but only the self that I'm comfortable with, which is the one personality that I show to the world every day. That's not sufficient. You got to bring all of the other, you got to bring the child in. You got to bring maybe the imagined self in 20 years from now. You got to bring the personal of the location that was of significance to you and put it on top of the location that the script is giving you. You have to put everything in practice. You have to move and you have to feel, not based on, I'm going to have feelings, therefore I have to have emotions. The emotions come out the same way as the lines of the monologue of the need to achieve an objective, a goal. Recreating, starting with the real of what is, because we always have to be aware and observant of what is. We can never go into the personal backstory or imagined fictional story and not be observant of the fact that the chair moves. I just realized that this chair is one of those chairs that rotate. Was I making noise when I was doing the episode? I don't know, but something is distracting me from keeping my eyes on the camera, which is wonderful because that means that the audience is going to see me pay attention to what is. So they're going to believe that I'm creating a life, a sensory experience for myself, which starts to look like that of a human being. Because that's what we would do in real life. We react using our senses to everything. The reason why I knew to come to sit in the chair is because I saw there was a chair. If my senses were not involved in my decision to where I'm going to sit, if I didn't use my vision to see where I was going to sit, I could sit next to the chair and fall on the ground and break my back. But in everyday life, we respond with our senses to everything that we do. It's just that we're not conscious of those responses, and we're not conscious every minute of the day exactly how we respond sensorially. But as actors, we have to become observant so we can train our senses to respond the same way that they do in everyday life to the fictional situations in the stories that we tell. And it's also so exciting because not only does it help for actors to become more active, but all of these exercises, all of these sensory experiences nowadays are being implemented in everything. If you're watching the trial, the Alec Murdaugh trial, which I don't want to go into it right now, but when you're watching the prosecution in trying to bring facts to what they believe their side of the story is to what happened, they are using the witnesses that they have, and they're not just letting them sit in the chair and tell their story. They're having them get up and they're having them demonstrate with their bodies what they saw, what happened. How did this happen? Did it happen like this? Was the body like this? Was the gun here? Was the gun here? Was the body turned halfway? Was the head down more? What happened to the hands? Everything is being demonstrated by lawyers in practice with their witnesses, because that is what will grab audiences. In the case of the jurors, which happen to be the audiences that they're trying to convince of their side of the story, that of the prosecution in the case. And the other side of the story, the defense attorneys, they're doing the same thing. They're demonstrating, they're having the witnesses demonstrate, they're having the witnesses get up from the chair, from just not doing the monologue in a one comfortable way, because they would feel much more comfortable being in the seat. They're making them get up so they can demonstrate. They can express themselves, they can show, because that is so much more vivid for the audiences, for the jurors, in convincing them of their side of the story. They're creating sensory experiences because they're having these witnesses relive that what they are saying. And that's what this is about. They're doing it now when you're watching house renovation shows. Why would they stage the house before a client comes in to decide if they want to buy it or not? They're staging it because they want to create a sensory experience. They're putting a sofa, they're putting the candle, they're putting the light, they're putting the pillows with different accents because they want to make the place as livable, as credible to be lived in. So when the client walks into the door, they're not just going to see an empty space, because it doesn't matter how beautiful the house is going to be. If it's just an empty space, it's not going to create any kind of emotions for anybody, because there's no sensory experience for them if there's nothing there for them to be able to connect to. They're putting the sofa, they're putting the pillow, because when the customers come in, they can look at the color of the pillow, and that might just remind them of something from their own personal life. That might just remind them of something from their own childhood. Options that they will have a sensory experience by completing the location with as many palpable objects, so their senses, their sight can be taken by the pictures on the walls, the smell of the candle, because that will give them a smell of home, of cozy, of intimacy, of family. So all of the tools of acting are being used in everything else in life. And not only that, but they will make you live life so much more vividly, so much more passionately. That's all I have to say. Happy Valentine's, everybody, and happy celebration of love, but most importantly, happy celebration of life. Thank you. Kisses. Bye.